Historians and folklorists love to argue the significance of women during the fight for U.S. independence. We happen to believe that the forgotten women heroes of the time deserve to be remembered. Here are 4 women warriors from the U.S. Revolution.
Let's dig into this.
We did a whole video on the incredible Deborah Sampson, one of our favorite women in U.S. history, and it tells her story in more detail than we can here. She enlisted in the Continental Army at the age of 21 under the name Robert Shirtliff, and concealed her true identity for almost 2 years, fighting in battles and even removing a bullet from her thigh herself when she was shot to keep her secret.
Eventually, a fever left her unconscious, and a doctor discovered she wasn't Robert Shirtliff at all. Following an honorable discharge from the Army, secured with the doctor's help, she married and had a family. Her story was told in a book, and for a time she gave lectures on her service, often in uniform. Deborah Sampson was the only woman to earn a full military pension for her participation in the Revolutionary War.
Nancy Morgan Hart may have been born in North Carolina around 1735, although no one is quite sure. A 6-foot-tall redhead who had the unfortunate pockmarks from a bout with smallpox, she was known to be feisty, fearless, and hot-headed. She married Benjamin Hart and moved to the frontier of northeast Georgia to raise her family, which eventually included 2 daughters and 6 sons, and everyone knew she was the one in charge of the family farm.
Sometime in 1779, a group of British soldiers showed up at the farm, demanding to be fed. Nancy didn't have a lot of options, but she quickly came up with a plan. She allowed the soldiers in, but had them stack their weapons in the kitchen. And while the soldiers ate and drank quite a bit, she quietly pushed the guns out of her house through a hole in the kitchen wall.
When the soldiers became suspicious, Nancy grabbed one of the guns and ordered them to stay where they were. 2 of the men lunged towards her and the few guns left in the house. Nancy shot them both dead, and then she held the remaining soldiers until her husband and neighbors came to see what was happening. Everyone wanted to shoot the remaining soldiers, but Nancy insisted they be hanged. Over 100 years later, 6 bodies were found on the farm. 4 had broken necks.
Reports say Nancy also acted as a sniper and a spy, and once threw lye soap she was making into the eye of a British spy looking through a crack in a wall, catching the wounded man and tying him up before turning him over to the local militia.
Her courage made her famous, and Hart County is named for her, along with nearby Lake Hartwell and Hartwell Dam. Hart State Park and Nancy Hart Highway were named after her too. And in the Civil War, a group of women in Georgia formed an all-female militia called the Nancy Hart Rifles.
You probably recognize the name Molly Pitcher and might remember her as the hero that brought water to dying soldiers during the Revolution. But no woman with that name ever existed. So who was she really?
Most historians believe Mary Ludwig Hayes was the real Molly Pitcher. 22 years old and by some reports pregnant, Mary went along with her husband William when he enlisted in the 4th Pennsylvania Artillery of the Continental Army. She was known as a tough gal, smoking and cussing just like the men in the camp.
During her husband's training, Mary served as a water carrier, taking water onto the field for the soldiers to drink and to soak the sponges used to clean out the cannon barrels after each shot. Soldiers would call out for the water, and this is where her nickname comes in. Molly was a common nickname for Mary, and the soldiers yelled, "Molly, Pitcher."
She was with her husband at Valley Forge in 1777, and along with Martha Washington and other women helped with the laundry, caring for the sick and injured soldiers. She was still with the troops at the Battle of Monmouth.
The battle was fought on a very hot day, and she had found 2 nearby springs to get water for the men. Her husband collapsed during the heavy fighting, either from heat exhaustion or injury, and was carried off the field. And Mary Hayes did not hesitate, taking his place, swabbing and loading cannon during the battle. Nearly injured herself when an enemy cannonball went right between her legs, Mary went on fighting.
After the battle, General Washington himself asked who the woman loading the cannon was. Hearing her story, he made her a non-commissioned officer, and she was called Sergeant Molly from that time on. In 1822, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania awarded Mary with an annual pension for her service in the war. She died in 1832 at the age of 87.
And then there's Margaret Corbin. She was born in Pennsylvania in 1751 and in 1772 married Virginia farmer John Corbin. When her husband enlisted to fight in the Pennsylvania artillery, Margaret went with him, joining other military wives who cooked and did laundry and cared for injured and sick soldiers as camp followers.
On November 16, 1776, John Corbin's company was at Fort Washington when they were attacked by several thousand Hessian soldiers. Corbin was assigned to a cannon on top of a ridge, and Margaret was acting as water carrier. She was reportedly standing next to her husband when he was killed by enemy fire. She immediately took his place and continued to fire the cannon until she was hit by enemy fire in the arm, chest, and jaw.
The British won the Battle of Fort Washington when the overwhelmed troops were forced to surrender. Margaret, horribly injured, was completely disabled and never fully healed. She was eventually awarded $30 by the Executive Council of Pennsylvania, and in 1779 the Congressional Board of War granted her half the monthly pay of a Continental Army soldier and a new set of clothes for her sacrifices. This made Margaret the first woman in the United States to receive a military pension from Congress. She was also enrolled in the Corps of Invalids, created by Congress for wounded soldiers.
Margaret Corbin was discharged from the Continental Army in 1783. She died at the age of 48. Originally buried in New York, she was moved to the West Point Cemetery and buried with full military honors in 1926. Sadly, in 2017, an archaeological study proved the remains thought to be Margaret were in fact those of a man, and Margaret Corbin's exact burial place is still unknown.
Thanks for watching.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And we'll see you on the next one. Hey, here's another DragonDen video you might like.
And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button.
And you can hit the notification bell if you'd like to know when our videos come out.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.